when I got to the final, I was seeded, I was straight onto the stage, and that made me feel a lot more comfortable. I don't think anything had stopped me that day. I just had to be in my bonnet, had my head on, I was in a good place. In them 18 months, I had to change my throw completely to compensate for it. If I don't get to the semis of the Lakeside that year, that I was going to go, and I hadn't told anyone this.
Hello, welcome along to the Tungsten Talk here on Pluto TV, where we delve into the life and times of dart players, their highs, their lows, where their careers began, and maybe what the future holds as well. Today, we've got Yossa, Jamie Hughes with us in the studio. Jamie, great to have you here with us on the Tungsten Talk. First of all, new beginnings for yourself in 2025. How have you settled into life here at the Super Series?
Yeah, obviously it was a bit of a tough start, but the longer it went on, I felt a lot more comfortable. And obviously, it's my first time here, so yesterday was just getting to know where everything is and how things work. So I'm really looking forward to tonight.
I suppose it's a bit of a full circle feel about this, isn't it? Because obviously you made your name on the BDO, the amateur side of the game, then played on the professional circuit for a number of years, which you will get onto, and now making the move, obviously having lost your tour card, back on the amateur side again.
Yeah, it's a massive challenge, if I'm being honest, because I think I said this yesterday. When I got my card, there was basically two options. You'd done the BDO or you did the PDC. Now, there's so many different routes and different things you can play in. So it's going to be interesting the next 12 months, seeing how I'll kind of get back into it.
You mentioned there being differences. Is that differences in terms of what is open to you, that the fact that now you haven't got your card, that actually there's probably more options open to you now than perhaps there would have been, say, 2015, 2016 time?
Yeah, I mean, I was very lucky in the BDO. I had a sponsor manager guy, Robert McDougall, who looked after me really well. He used to take me everywhere. He basically, all I had to do was turn up and play darts. Now I'm doing this all on my own, so I have to find all this out myself now. But in them days as well, like I say, I had him, he looked after me, and we went everywhere around Europe. And I think a lot of players have probably been held back in the future by not having the funds to do that. Whereas, you know, you've got all the ADC tour, you've got the, if you're good enough MODUS, if you get invited kind of thing, or if you qualify through the ADC, you know, so there's a lot more avenues open for players who probably in the past have been held back because of the money side of things.
It's interesting. Jamie makes a very good point that there's so many players that we see here at the Super Series that maybe 5-6 years ago when it was BDO or PDC, we just wouldn't see flourish here. Maybe a Tom Sykes would never have seen come through if it wasn't for projects like this in the ADC. Especially from certain areas. We're talking about a world-class sport, in our opinion, and a lot of people would agree with the strides that have been made over the last few years. But we're talking about a working-class sport as well, especially in the UK. I don't know what it's like in other countries around the world. I know that Japan, they've got a great deal of sponsors, some of their players. You look at their shirts, they look like F1 drivers. But it's not as easy as that over here because it's expensive to live in this country, especially in certain parts. But even when you go up north and a little bit further west, people work really, really hard just to have an opportunity to do something with their lives. When something comes along, they want to try, but it comes with a risk. You mentioned obviously getting some backing to start out on the BDO circuit. Where did that journey begin for yourself?
I had a phone call one Saturday evening off the guy, Robert McDougall. He says that me and another lad, Steve Gittis, they both run the West Midlands County Darts at the time, who I was playing for, and they says England had just started the Grosvenor Grand Prix events, and that was where he started. They says, we want to take you and 3 others. There was Ian Jones, a lad called Andrew Forrester, and a lad named Dean Stewart, and they says, we're going to take you, like it's like a full car, Mac will drive you. We want to go to all them this year and see where we go. What about time-wise? What kind of year was that? 2012, I'm thinking, around 2012. And then, obviously, you did that, and then suddenly you started playing the tour a little bit more after that, once you started playing those events? Yeah, well, obviously, my fight was in the hands of the people who was paying for it, and that they wanted me to go everywhere. They says, we want you to go everywhere, because that's the best chance of getting in Lakeside. That was the aim. Yeah, back in the day, around 2013, you made your debut for England. We were talking about this in the last 24 hours, Henry and I.
we looked at some of your teammates. It's quite astonishing who you made your debut with, wasn't it? You had everybody in there.
Yeah, I was a bit overwhelmed, if I'm being honest, and it was a dream debut, I'll be honest. I lost. And I remember coming off and I was devastated, and I remember Yorkshire Martin Atkins, he went, "Don't worry, lad," he said, "I lost on my debut," he says, "and I've got probably the best record in this room." He said, "So you'll be okay." And I think I probably mirrored that, because after that, there weren't many matches I lost in an England shirt.
And that was kind of as well the tale of yourself on an individual basis when you were playing on the BDO circuit. Obviously, after that, you started playing the circuit a bit more. And then suddenly we see your name in one or two things. And I suppose the first one for a lot of people where they would have seen you for the first time was the World Masters back in 2014. Just tell us a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, well, I always struggled at the Masters because you could have the throw in consecutive legs and it threw a lot of players, and when I got to the final, I was seeded, I was straight onto the stage, and that made me feel a lot more comfortable because I knew there weren't going to be any messing about with whose darts is it. So I just went up there and just played my game, and I'm sure Mr. Dalby made his debut in the World Masters that weekend as well, because I remember saying to him, "You look so natural up there." Yeah.
You guys would actually meet again a few years later, right, at the Grand Slam of Darts. But that 2014 World Masters, it was famous for Martin Phillips winning it. There was a lot of attention based on Martin at that time because he's been around for 30 years at this point. Did you feel the amount of attention that tournament was garnering at the time?
No, the only thing I remember about that is going 2-0 up and thinking, "Oh my God, I've won the World Masters." And I never won another set. So that was a massive lesson as well. Don't count your chickens before the eggs have hatched.
Do you feel like that was the moment where you then suddenly began to think, right, I've made a final of the World Masters, there is something to be had on this circuit now?
Me personally, no, because obviously you do see these flash-in-the-pan results, and it was probably the Finder Masters just after that what kind of set the belief in that, okay, you take a flash in the pan, a one-off, you're playing well here and just keep going.
I suppose that was the important thing to back it up. And for those that don't know, the Finder Masters was officially kind of the fourth major, wasn't it, in the BDO? It was played in Holland and in front of a TV audience, and you managed to win that. And that was, again, straight after the World Masters and then right in the run-up of Lakeside, wasn't it?
Yeah, I can remember, I think Bobby George put the gish of death on me at Lakeside because, as he does, he always tips someone and they never do any good. But I was playing probably the best darts of my life up to then, and when I look back, I think that was probably the best chance I ever had to win that, because I'd got that, no one knew much about me, I'd got that kind of mystery, but I run into Glenn. Glenn was playing very well at the time then, and I think he lost to Martin in the semis that year. And I thought he was going to go on and win it, Glenn, because he was just playing so consistently well as Glenn does. So, yeah, that was probably the one where I thought you got a chance. Looking back, I'd got a chance.
At that time, I'm sure you were gaining a lot of experience as well as making a lot of mates on the tour. You and I both know that it's really important to have a network to make yourself feel comfortable in what is a very lonely sport. Who was influential for you at the time?
Glenn, massively, obviously. Jim Williams, James Urrell, we used to, just them long days, so you'd just sit at a table chatting rubbish and taking the mick out of each other. That was kind of our thing, and as you know, Glenn's very good at that as well.
And very easy to pick on as well, isn't he?
Who, Glenn?
Yeah.
I wouldn't have thought, he's very good at coming back from when you try and pick on him, yeah.
We're talking about your first experience of Lakeside. You're a relative unknown going into that, but then suddenly people knew exactly who you were. What was that 2015 season like, the first time you've actually played with people knowing who Jamie Hughes is and what you're capable of?
If I'm being honest, I think it was kind of a very uphill trajectory from there, and I was very consistent in my rankings. I think I was world number 4 for like 3 years on the bounce, so it was a very consistent period in my career for getting results. I was probably picking up a couple, 3 tournaments every year, so I was playing decent stuff.
And it was, as you mentioned, for a number of years, you felt like possibly, even though you maybe didn't pick up the really big titles, what you were very good at was being very consistent, always getting at the thick end of things, whether it be the Lakeside, whether it be the World Masters, there's always somewhere where you, at some point of the year, you had a very good one somewhere.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was very hard to try and win the majors. Then Scott Waits was probably in his pomp. You had Glenn doing what he was doing. Was Bunting still there? Maybe not, but you had Wilson as well at the top of his game just after. It was so hard to try and compete with them boys because they was just so good. But obviously, the way the BDO circuit went, there was kind of the top players every few years kind of made their way to the PDC and made way for the next ones to come and take their place. And it was a good conveyor belt of talent.
Were there conversations around about the time of 2017, 2018 with yourself and Glenn and James and the other boys you would hang around about prospective moves to the PDC? Did anybody think, yeah, if we go, we might all go together?
If I'm being honest, that was never ever spoke of. It was our own business, our own personal business. We never ever spoke about it. It was something with me that kind of, there was kind of a eureka moment where it was like, okay, it kind of just happened over time. Over time, I was like, well, found myself becoming less and less happy and more wanting new challenges. And kind of when you've been to the same tournaments 4, 5, 6 times, you know, I kind of wanted new challenges.
And you actually look at that as well. The people that he's mentioned, they all seem to go at different times, so it was all an individual choice.
How would you look back on those BDO years?
Probably the best days of my life, to be honest. It was a very good social circuit, you know. There was long days and, you know, we was all round everywhere. And because obviously you're probably going to, I don't know, Belgium. And so you've got a lot of the English players there. So we all kind of had our own, we was all kind of together because we'd all find ourselves in the same countries at the same time. So yeah, it was good. Obviously, it was good because a lot of them was internationals as well. So that was good for the England squad, for the, you know, the spirit and the mentality of the England squad. We was always together.
And then the move over to the PDC, did that feel like a natural step of progression for yourself?
At the time, yeah. I said to myself, if I don't get to the semis of the Lakeside that year, that I was going to go. And I hadn't told anyone this. That was something I kept to myself, which was a shock to Robert McDougall when I lost. Oh, his face. Bless him. Yeah, it was kind of... I'd already spoke to Matt Ward at the Grand Slam just before, and he kind of says, if you want to come, that's there. And I did say at the time, I think I will if I don't get to the semis, because I don't know if anybody... You was contractually bound to be there the year after for the semis. But I often think what would have happened if I had got to that semis, you know what I mean? Because it's all ifs, buts and maybes, I suppose. But I think the right things happened at the right times.
Because the landscape was so different. It's not like now where everyone's got that open net of playing at Q School or playing Challenge Tour and there'd be no repercussions. There was a time where if you wanted to make that step, you either get your card or you excluded pretty much.
Yeah, if you'd played at Lakeside, it was in the contract kind of thing that... But yeah, that was... But my personal circumstances had changed as well, my job. So I was no longer allowed to have the time off that I needed. And it was that come into it as well, because at the time I thought, well, all the PDCs in England, so it cuts the travelling down. I ain't going to have any Fridays or Mondays off work. So that was a major factor as well, not wanting to travel anymore.
And then, as you mentioned, you make the move over to the PDC and you kind of hit the ground running, didn't you, very, very quickly?
Well, after the first year of the Challenge Tour, but I kind of struggled the first, I'd say, 6, 7 months, however many tournaments that was. But the last couple, I kind of got into it then. And then obviously I got my tour card. I don't think anything had stopped me that day. I just had to be in my bonnet, had my head on, I was in a good place. And then I obviously took that on too. At the time, Paul will know this, your first Pro Tours was UK Open. Now that was the year before, sorry. That was another, like I didn't get my card, but I was in the UK Open qualifiers and I'd done well in them. I was seeded like number 24 for the UK Open out to them qualifiers. So that gave me the belief that if I do get my card next year, I'm good enough because I've already been there and done it.
And when Jamie joined the tour, it was a case of a lot of us in the media were saying, we know who's coming from somewhere else. with form. And you talk about people these days like Connor Scott, for instance, and he's made a major quarter-final in the last couple of months. And when other people do other things, we knew that Jamie was in great form. We knew his pedigree. So when he was getting to the thick end of tournaments, it wasn't a surprise.
And it wouldn't be too long into 2019 where you achieved the Eurotour success in the Czech Republic.
Yeah, I think that was an accumulation of bad luck. That basically turned, all my bad luck turned into, that was my reward for all the bad luck I'd had, you know, that tournament. Because, I mean, Paul will probably tell you, I was so unlucky that year, the performances, and just not being able to get over lines, and players just having worldies against me back and taking shots out at the times when they'd got to, and now I'm sitting on a double after 12 and things like that. And I had a lot of bad luck the early parts of that year, but I was doing well with the Euro qualifying and on the Euro Tour, and that was where that come from. I had a great year on the Euro Tour.
That tournament is something we reference very often. It was the first Czech Darts Open, and it was so hot that some people wilted in the heat, but it was you and Stephen Bunting that made it to the final. We know that Mervyn King actually struggled to get back to the practice room because it was so hot. I think it was measured at 66 degrees on stage at one point. How hot was it?
That they all seemed to be hot stages over there. There was a couple before that, but that was, yeah, obviously it was hot, but it was, I found it kind of, it didn't make me sweat. I just felt really hot, which I think was a bonus. But I think a bonus as well was I was on last of the night, so the temperature had dropped. If I'd have been on early afternoon, it may have been a different story.
When you look back at that success in Czech, is that the one moment from your career that you think that's probably the biggest one that I take with me, the biggest win that I take with me?
Yeah, I think so, yeah, because obviously I played some good darts, knocked some good players out, and yeah, you know, the money helped as well. You know, that's something to look back on.
Injuries came into your career, not necessarily straight after that, but in the coming seasons. Tell us about how difficult that's been.
Well, I think I was supposed to play in the World Series of Darts qualifiers, and I had to pull out because I got in the venue. I went up to, I think it was Graham at the time, that might have been Keith. And I says, what time have I got till to pull out? And he says, 9:30 or something. This was about 8:30. I went, right. I said, I'm going to try and loosen this up. I says, because I ain't going to be able to play if this carries on like this. And that was the first time I knew there was a major problem there, because it was just, I couldn't throw. It was just so painful. And it kind of, obviously I pulled out of that. It just wouldn't go well. And then it was kind of, I'd have good days and bad days. So it was kind of, you know, I was just hoping that it was a good day when it needed to be a good day with it. But I never got a proper diagnosis until, because I went to see physiotherapy. So I was having shockwave therapy on it for tennis elbow and that. And I said, I want to, it was because of Jeffrey Deswan. He said he'd got calcification in his muscles. I thought, well, what if there's something like that in the muscles causing it? So I asked for an MRI scan, and I went and had an MRI scan on it, and it came back that it was a bone spur and abnormal bone growth, and that it needed an operation. So obviously I didn't want to pull out the Worlds, so I penciled it in for early January, and it was about a 6 to 7 week recovery period that held me, and I didn't throw a dart then until the UK Open.
We're hearing this a lot these days. We've heard very recently that Michael Smith's got multiple ailments that he needs to rehab. Jeffrey Desvan is a fantastic example of someone who's got a violent action, but he's needed surgeries, he's needed rehabs as well. People are throwing so many darts these days, Henry, that dart players, they've just got to be on top of things.
How much would you say injuries scuppered your progress in the PDC?
100%. What happened with me was, because it was around about 18 months from that, when I realised there was a problem, to when I found out the problem. In them 18 months, I had to change my throw completely to compensate for it. And that's the thing I'm still trying to get back now, that throw, what Paul keeps on about. Because it just, I'd got that used to throwing in a different manner, trying to taking more out the follow through and putting a bit more wrist in to try and compensate, my throw changed, and then I obviously couldn't then go straight back to trying to throw it. I had to try and do it gradually, and still now it's still very inconsistent. I feel the throw.
The funny thing is, when we look at Jamie's throw, and I've marvelled at it for years, it doesn't look different to us from the camera angles we see, but in his body and his mind, it will feel 100% different, and that's the most important thing. That search is difficult, but we follow back and we think he can find it again.
Finally, let's look ahead to the future. Obviously, change of scenery, change of environments for yourself in 2025. What does the short-term future for Jamie Hughes look like, and what would you like to achieve still in the game?
Well, obviously, I'd like to get my tour card back and have another crack at that. I'd like to be full-time pro again one day, because I've tried it 3 times now to just concentrate on the darts, and I feel like I've got a little bit more better at it every time, if that makes sense. And I kind of nearly cracked it the last time, but I didn't quite. But in the short-term future, I just want to try and get back to playing as much as I can, because I have suffered through lack of activity, especially since Ali Pali. I lost my tour card. You know, I've kind of where do I go from here? Because I didn't know myself. So my body's not in the best state. I've got a bad back now, so it don't rain it poor for me. So I've tried to give me back a bit of a rest, and hope that if I give it a rest, it'll get better, so I can then kick on and put the time in again.
We wish you all the very best of that. Thank you for chatting with us, Jamie. Okay, thank you as ever. Thank you for watching the latest edition of the Tungsten Talk here on Pluto TV.